Hello, little gay people in my phone, and welcome back once again to The Glass Closet. This is a gay podcast where we talk about gay stuff with gay people. And here with me today, I'm so happy to say, we have one of my favorite gay people, Ava Emilione, founder and editor-in-chief of Ebony Tomatoes Collective, a literary zine focused on Black literature, and a podcon of the Glass Closet podcast.
Yes.
Ava, how the hell are you?
I'm good. I'm learning, unlearning, as always.
They should put that on my tomb.
Yeah.
She learned and she unlearned.
Yep.
Boots.
Yeah. Gaining and losing information every day.
I think that often. I actually kind of want to ask, what did you think about the reception of our last episode?
I thought it was really exciting.
Yeah.
Really, I really was not expecting it to get the traction that it did.
Same.
And it was interesting seeing so many people engage with the topics that we were talking about and connecting it to their own lives and experiences.
Yeah.
I thought it was very cool to see what people said. There were obviously some comments that were troublesome.
It was a lot of love.
It was so much love.
It was a lot of love.
It was.
And there were some really beautiful takes about just like, it was interesting because I feel like you and I, when we communicate and talk about life, like we exist in such similar spaces in queerness and raciality and our friends and just like New York and like so many things just so intrinsically make sense when we talk to each other.
Yeah.
That it kind of, it was one of those episodes where I was like, the camera's not here, like it's just me. Like,
it's just us. It's just us.
And so to see people bring their experiences to our conversation and be like, wow, and especially because I didn't realize we talked about a lot of shit. Like I was like interracial dating, like class consciousness, like I was just like, okay, damn. But it was really cool to see people be like, damn, like this point resonated with me because of this lived experience, but also certain things about that pissed me off eventually.
Yes.
Because I was learning, like, as things go viral, as things, like, get big, it's, like, I felt like initially it was the people who, cousins who really, like, from jump understood what we were saying. And then the people where the video was almost like a resource, where they were like, oh, there's some shit I do not know and have not thought about in this video. Which I was like, I guess we live in an echo chamber, for better or for worse, but I was like, wow, I didn't realize maybe we woke.
Maybe we're woke virus fine. Fuck.
Damn it.
Yeah. No, we got the woke virus. What are we gonna do? No, but it was interesting to see the people engage with it and just kind of be surprised or, you know, like grappling with these concepts for the first time or the second time, just not having that familiarity, which I think is kind of a part of what we were even talking about how like social media and internet algorithms kind of form these echo chambers where it's like, even though this is a very big part of people that you are in proximity to, you might not actually understand the nuances of that struggle because that's not what you're engaging with, so that's not what you're receiving until maybe by some luck you found this episode and now you're thinking about it, which is difficult, but I'm glad that we were able to bring that to people and have them engage with it in some sense.
Definitely.
As much as it's like, you know, not our job to educate people.
And don't forget that.
Yes, sometimes it happens that way because it's like the information has to get out somehow, and a lot of people who should be doing that work aren't doing that work. So oftentimes it falls on like just people who have a deep understanding of the topic.
I agree. And I mean, I won't go as far as making a little jokey about it not being my job as a Black woman to educate you. But like, I have this podcast because that is the intention, like to bring nuance, to bring discussions, to bring different lived experiences to the forefront, have people talk about it. Like, I love a comment thread beefing. Like,
yes, I do
love
too.
A beefy comment
I was
thread.
lurking through those comments.
And the girlies were fighting. But honestly, it was pretty peaceful for something where we were talking about such, I think, hot topics, I guess. There wasn't too many people being like, you should die. So I was like, that's cool.
Yeah.
I think
like,
it fostered a decent community.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I just hope that they can bring that to their communities and their families and like start to engage with people with that knowledge.
In real life.
One comment, my favorite comment that I saw was a Black father being like, I have a little girl and I would like love for her to learn. Yes. I was like, if King is here today, if King is listening.
And I have him here, I'm bringing him out. Like,
yes, free TV, free TV.
Tesla. Oh, wait, no.
Today's video is sponsored
sponsored by Incogni. Hey, fun fact, there are hundreds of shady companies out there buying, selling, and trading people's personal data. I hope it's not you, brother, but it could be. Think like your address, your phone number, your shopping habits, your whole online vibe, online presence is just floating around out there in the ether, and people are purchasing it. That is where Incogni comes in. Incogni will scrub your data off of those creepy data broker sites for you. They do the legal heavy lifting, send out the requests for you, and they keep following up until all of your information is actually gone. The internet can be a very scary place, and you deserve privacy. So if that's something you're interested in and you're ready to take control of where and who has your data, check out Incogni at the link below. And if you use code BITNIA, you can get 60% off an annual plan. You deserve privacy, brother. Let's make it happen. Thanks so much to Incogni for sponsoring this video. Go to incogni.com/bitnia or just use code BITNIA at checkout to get 60% off an annual plan. Anyway, but today, well, we talking about a lot of things today because I was like, okay.
Yes.
Especially because we didn't actually plan much for that episode. So I think it's so funny. I was like, what if we talked about race? Because it's just like, yeah, and we would. Yeah. But today we did plan a little. Mm-hmm. And today I'll also say I'm a little on edge because I'm gonna.
Same.
Yeah. Today, I think I'll share with the audience that, aside from being, a YouTuber, podcaster, content creator, I have a full-time job. Mm-hmm. I work in corporate media, and and Ava, you want to talk about your work experience a little bit, please?
So, I went to NYU for film and economics, and then after that, I worked in finance. After that, I worked in some literary capacity with some writers who I was assisting, and yeah, just I do have some experience with corporate America and all that entails, and just professionalism as a concept and an experience and a performance.
I'm gonna put that on a shirt. Professionalism as a concept, mm-hmm. Not as a real thing.
It's totally, yeah.
Yeah, and I think we both, by virtue of certain experience, wanted to bring light to the conversation around what it means to be marginalized. Really, I'm gonna put queer in the title, but like marginalized definitely in corporate America and in these spaces that require a real, sometimes what's the word, inequivalence, is it a word?
Yeah,
sure.
Equivocation.
Yeah, sure, right. Mm-hmm. Of ideals and survival, I guess. Mm-hmm. You want to talk a little bit about what are your meanderings about? What are your meanderings about when you worked in finance, and if you could share?
Oh, yes. No, I would love to share that. I think that that's such a loaded question because I had so many feelings working in finance, but honestly even more feelings about working in like so-called like progressive spaces, and seeing how like even working for people who shared identities to me and had overlap with identities throughout my life, like I'm not just thinking about one specific thing here. I think what really stands out to me is hypocrisy and dissonance. Dissonance being like you see one thing, you're being told one thing, but the true experience is something very different. And struggling with that kind of split mind. I think that's why like Severance has gotten so much love, and like I have some opinions about Severance. I'm not a Severance stan. I have watched it. I think it fell off after season 1, but y'all can flog me for that in the comments.
Legal take.
Legal take. Like I will get my lawyers involved, but I will say that. I think like that's why Severance like did so well, because it addressed this monster in corporate America of being like, okay, like you're kind of separating your identity between like work and self. And I think that's very true, but I think something that's more concerning is the dissolution of that barrier between the work self and the person self. And now you kind of have this merging where we've internalized corporate language because it's been like we're constantly being advertised to, we're constantly being marketed to from corporations who want to make a profit and want to get our labor and our buying power and our money and our attention. But over time, it's becomes a culture. It becomes a big part of our culture. And now I'm seeing like even when I'm interacting with like employers or colleagues or anything like that, like where I'm like, there's sometimes when I'm speaking to people and I'm like, are you viewing yourself as like what are you to yourself in the wake of like dedicating 40 plus hours a week to the corporate experience and these like
the goals of the company.
Yeah, the goals of the company. And I think that like it's very easy to, you know, point our fingers at finance and tech and be like, finance bad, tech bad, and like those industries have a lot of problems, and like absolutely. But strangely enough, like I've experienced like a lot more like interpersonal frustration in like publishing spaces and in media spaces and in journalism spaces. And I think that that is absolutely something that is overlooked, because I think that there's this idea in media, and I'll say media very broadly. So like I've worked in like film spaces, worked in like writing and literary spaces, journalism spaces, and there's this kind of not holier than thou, but this idea that like we've learned, we've unlearned, we woke. Yeah.
We woke.
We woke.
Yes.
And there, that whole mentality is definitely existent there. And so you come into these positions as someone who is marginalized and wanting an opportunity and being like, okay, like this aligns with my values. This is going to be good. I'm going to love it. And then you get there and the experience is actually very different. I've been treated in a lot of very weird and sad ways. Like I've been screamed at on set. I've seen other people who like I've worked with like get fired on like a public email chain in like a very humiliating way. In all of these spaces, and also just dealt with like, you know, like miscommunication and like unclear boundaries and all of those things in these spaces that are supposed to be progressive. And so I think it says something where it's like, okay, we're looking at capitalism, we're looking at professionalism and corporate existence as a white settler colonial type of structure, which is absolutely true, but I think that we're doing ourselves a really big disservice by not acknowledging how that's influencing everyone who exists under the corporate system, including people who view themselves as marginalized but still exert power over other people.
We have a moment like, damn, exactly. Like that just honestly was so healing. After a long day of work, what Dolly Parton say? 9 to 5.
9 to 5. What a way to make a living, girl.
Yes, like that just feels so refreshing to hear, because I feel that, especially the point you're making about kind of the duplicity between, or I guess the ways that we can point the finger very easily at like tech spaces, or what's the other example? Business, finance spaces, and say, well, this is American Psycho. These are the soulless guys who just want money, blah, 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 blah. But it's even more frustrating. It's even more difficult. And dare I say, I wonder what a black woman's experience would be in finance or tech, because it's like, that seems like you're getting what you signed up for. Whereas or you're going in with less hope.
Yeah.
That's a little less optimism about, you're going to be surrounded by white men, you're going to be surrounded by arrogant white men who love money. Like, or at least that's a stereotype, right? And like when you go into these more like liberal arts aligned, like, or arts aligned, or just more theory, like what's soft skills?
Soft skills.
Aligned roles, like in media, or publishing, film. And I think it hurts more. I think it's more disappointing, because it's like, especially when I feel like some of the work experiences I've had, the product is so antithetical to what it was like to make that damn product. Like, it's just it's like they profit a lot off of, not there. Let me not break my end. I'm not talking about any, I'd like to say this is all alleged.
It's all alleged, it's all allegations.
This isn't about anybody in particular, but just like in theory, the product, what you're selling is typically aligned with some type of socio-political struggle, or like trying to make some greater statement. That's what art's supposed to do, right? So when you're working in these spaces that are aligned with art in a time when we need to be telling art about marginalized people, and then the people making the art are like not super aligned with the lessons of the art.
Yeah.
And I think that catch-22, that cognitive dissonance, it's honestly, it feels like a daily gaslighting. It's like a very different experience than I don't want to maybe conflate, because I don't know what the experiences of someone in like finance or tech would be like, but I think that's unique to working in soft skill spaces, as opposed to being like, all right, I'm a stockbroker.
Got it. Yeah, I think it's definitely, like, I align with what you said about, like, gaslighting, for sure. And I think you're bringing up something interesting. And I'll come back to the experience being in finance as well. But this distinction between, like, content and process. So it's like, we see, you know, like, let's say, you know, you're working for someone who has, like, puts out great content, right? Like, either, like, a publishing house or a journalist or a network or, you know, some type of, like, organization or individual who's creating content. And I think that, like, we live in a society. We do live in a society. We live in a society that really, like, prioritizes, like, the critique and analysis of, like, content itself, you know? So, like, even in our last video, you know, people were like, oh my gosh, this is, like, so amazing, so cool, or had any thoughts about it. But none of it was actually, like, asking, how was this made? Like, what is your relationship between one another? What was it like to make this video, right?
We should do an episode.
Yeah, exactly. Which, like, in the sense of, like, a podcast like this, like, we're friends, we're talking, it's ethical, it's cool. But when you get to, you know, bigger productions and things that, like, do have, like, corporate backing and things like that, I think, like, the content, they're very mindful of what they're putting out. They're very mindful of, like, how it's going to be received, how it's going to be critiqued.
What's literally in the script.
Exactly. But they know that they're not going to be held as accountable for the process unless someone is, like, a whistleblower or someone's, like, outwardly saying something about it, right? So I think that as long as, like, people are not getting canceled or people are not being held accountable for the process of making their art and making their work, it's kind of secondary. And without that further forethought about, you know, how are we working together? How am I treating the people under me? Or not even, like, this idea of someone being under you. Like, how are you grappling with that? How is the hierarchy of the structure? Who gets the power? Who gets the say?
Who's silent?
And who were you silent or silenced?
And Oprah's here too. Everybody's here this week.
Exactly. But I think, like, this hyperfixation we have on content ignores some very important things, like the form and the process of creating a piece of work and, like, what the social, environmental, and cultural ramifications are of, you know, putting people who want to tell a good story and throwing them into this capitalist system that does not prioritize their voices or their personhood. It's all a sacrifice to the god of content.
Absolutely. And I think that leads me to this thought I was having about college as a breeding ground, but also a facet of this cultural cognitive dissonance. Like, I think you went to NYU.
Yes.
Famously, I went to the New School.
Yeah.
I've never said that. Like, I do have a degree. And I think, at least I can speak to my, like, education, it was very theoretical. The New School is very much known for being, like, we think, we active, we
see.
We woke. Like, I have to keep saying it, but, like, we woke. It is the woke school. And it was interesting because I always felt like my education, it wasn't super technical, like, in a way that Tish is. Like, I studied media and culture, so it was a lot of reading more than, and I would take a little editing class, but it wouldn't be like, I don't know how to light this set, you know what I'm saying? Like, but because of that, a lot of my education was so much about critiquing the industry I'm about to enter. And I would say that's true for many liberal arts schools. And I would say that's true for many majors. Like a psych degree, I know, I have heard people be like, my psych degree has made me really disillusioned with the psych industry. And that type of thing, that I think my college experience actually has hindered my workability because I'm like, wow, I actually understand and, like, I'm able to be cognizant with the ways of which I am literally being, like, on an interpersonal level, may not feel the most seen, may not feel the most respected, but also on a systemic level, not feeling like being exploited or, like, being like I feel like we're even talking about the language we're using around corporate or like the culture within itself and hierarchy, and it's just like, as a queer person, I'm gonna bring this back to queers in corporate, like, and I use queer strongly and not gay, like queer, like a queer mindset in corporate is starting to feel a lot more incongruent to me.
It's, yes. Yes.
I'm like, did I speak?
Yeah,
Like,
no, you absolutely spoke. I completely agree. And I think, like, also viewing queer as, like, a verb, and not just, like, an identity.
Real.
Right? So I think the incongruence. The incongruence. Thank you. The incongruence that you're talking about, and I think really comes from this this difference between critique and action. Critique in and of itself is not action and is not change. So when you're like, ideally, you would go to college and learn how to critique and learn the problems, become disillusioned, and then go out into the workforce and change it for the better.
Right.
And that's kind of the myth that we're told in college. In a lot of like career preparation spaces. And I don't think so much of that is the fault of the college, because they're like, our goal is to prepare the youth for the world.
Yeah.
And they do that.
Absolutely.
But I think that, you know, we can critique and then we get to the point where like, okay, I understand what is wrong. Now it is time for me to change it. And then we see the system starts, the green screen begins to fall down, and we begin to actually see the inner workings of the system and how nefarious and complex it truly is. And I think that like to stay in a place of like constant critique is to almost insulate yourself from the reality and the hugeness of what it means to take action against corporatism, against the corporate world, which is very scary. But I think being queer too, like queerness in and of itself, I believe, is an action. It is to make something strange, to make something that's not normative, to resist what is being told, what is being seen, right? So even if you're like gay and, you know, homosexual, and like, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're queer, right?
Absolutely.
It doesn't necessarily mean that you're taking the action of looking around your life, looking around your work, and being like, how can we make this queer? How can we queer this and like add, like, bring our personal identity and our personal values and our collective values as queer people of like community and mutual aid into the corporate world? I think the two things are very different, because that's not the corporate values. It's not the ethos.
It's not the foundation of it.
No.
And it's interesting. I'm going to shout out Zacharie, who is in season 1, because I think that they are such a good representation of being like very much in the world of finance and like really queering it, like really doing work that is for the community, that just feels so rooted in like their ethos and their values as a person. And I think like they're a great example. But I feel in my work experience sometimes like disempowered. Like I feel, and it's also like obviously we're talking so broadly about things that are so idiosyncratic and so like specific to one person's job and one person's life. But yeah, I think I'm thinking about the realities of being actionable and the realities. I'm seeing like people like us, honestly. I'm seeing a lot of people who are like, we have these experiences, especially after following the fairy tale of like, okay, because are you a first-gen college student?
I am.
I am also. No,
Yeah.
I'm not. I'm a first-gen American. My mom did go to college, but like the myth, obviously, my mom's worked at the same corporate job for the past 30 years, and like I was like, okay, work, I'm gonna slay, boots, degree, da, and then I'll get my little job. And I did that.
And now what? And that's the thing, because so that brings up something. I feel like I had a similar experience. I'm not first-gen American, but I am a first-generation college student. And it was a great privilege for me to be able to go to college. I got a full scholarship to NYU through like an amazing scholarship program that I thank very much. But within that college experience, like bitches did not really know like what they wanted to really be doing, and so I definitely like changed my mind a lot. But the interesting part about that was I went to a lot of networking events, because whatever I committed to, I was like, I'm gonna do this, and I like really committed. So when I declared an started studying econ, I knew that I wanted to work in finance. And so I went to a lot of like career preparations and mentorship opportunities, and like really just like, because if you're not a finance major, a business major, you have to work pretty hard to like break into the industry, and I knew that I would have to. So I really was just like, what is the lay of the land? What do I have to know? And so in those situations, in those networking events and all that, I met these like women who I really admired, because they lived in New York, didn't have to rely on anyone to live in New York, worked hard, seemed really smart and driven, and there were just a lot of these qualities in them that like I wanted to embody. Like I was like, I want to be you when I get older. I want to be, and like there's definitely like those self-care like corporate TikToks and stuff that I was consuming at the time, where it's like, spend a day with me as like a finance analyst, and they're like drinking their matcha and going on their computer, and I'm like, this looks great, because coming from a background of like, you know, experiencing precarity and experiencing, you know, financial insecurity, you know, I definitely like, that was like, okay, this is my way out. This is the way that I can like build generational wealth for my family and like whatever. And I looked up to those people that I was in community with at that time. Not that I still don't admire them and their work ethic, but I thought it would just be very different. Then I got into finance and I saw finance specifically is interesting because you're moving money, right? You have to have a very clear understanding of like what is being invested in, who is investing in them, where those things are going. And the answers are very, it causes a lot of disillusionment, I would say, because I grew up being like, okay, I'm gonna snag this like 6 figures for myself and I'm gonna be a girl boss and I'm gonna change the tide. And then I get in the chair and I get the job and I get hired and I sit in the chair and I see billions of dollars that are being moved around by like very wealthy groups of asset managers and private equity firms and very wealthy individuals, billions and millions of dollars. And I'm like, oh, even in this position, I am so powerless. Like, even in this position, even though I have the understanding of capital, I don't have the power over capital. I don't have the, I'm not allowed, even in this position, and I'll never be allowed truly to redistribute wealth in a meaningful way. All I can do is be a diverse hire and get other people to be diverse hires at the very best and train people. But at the end of the day, the true capital, the true material wealth, the true things that are going to, you know, keep people in their houses and keep people fed and allow people to live good lives and have health care, those means are absolutely not in our hands, not even working in finance. So I think we reached this, I think what you were saying about going through this whole process, seeing your mom work really hard in like her corporate job and then getting there, you're reaching the wall. And there is absolutely a wall. Even with diversity and equity and inclusion, it's like diversity, equity, and inclusion can only go so far when the system itself and the capital itself, the way that money is moved, the allowance people have to have access to that capital is extremely restricted. And so we can only do so much within the realm of diversity when it's the same, we're all doing the same thing, whether you're a black woman, a black, or what is it, the polyhijabi amputee. Like, you can literally be like polyhijabi amputee sitting in that chair and still furthering settler colonialism because all you can do is follow the orders of this chain of command and this hierarchy that exists. And I think that like people go in to corporate America wanting to change the world, but corporate America is the world. So I think that's really the hard pill to swallow too.
Definitely, and it's so disillusioning. It's really like, maybe Black Mirror is the wrong example, but just like that one of those things where you're like, whoa, wait, like all of this was like low key not real.
It's not real. And I think that I was thinking about like this conversation before I came because we talked a little bit about it, and like I think there is this illusion of transparency. I think that exists in so many facets of society. Dare I embark on a metaphor real quick?
Oh,
walk with me. Okay. So like with the iPhone, right? Like even just very simple, we all use it, we all love it. The messaging around cellular devices, cell phones, is like, you have the world at your fingertips and you're gonna know exactly how this information is given to you and you're gonna have all the information in the world. Okay, great. So we have this little like black mirror in our pocket where we can see ourselves, and we have access to all the information in the world, except for how the phone itself is actually working and getting that information to us and what the mechanisms are of that technology. So we have access to the content, we don't have access to the process, and the process is the power, right? So bringing that into like corporate America, we're kind of told like, it's very inviting, right? It's very flowery, it's very inspiring, where it's like, people who look like you can do this. And you're like, yeah, people who look like me can do it. And it's like, you have the world at your fingertips. You have a secure job in a very insecure world. You have, you know, a seat in the chair, a seat at the room, a seat at the table. We hear so much about the seat in the table, right? And it's exciting, and it's like, okay, I can actually do this. I can make a life for myself. And you get there, and there's this illusion of transparency where, like, you know that you're going to be doing this, that, or the other, but we actually are not understanding, like, how the corporate system in and of itself actually works. And we are being told that we are going to change something that, by design,
it needs to stay stagnant, actually. Do you agree?
Like corporate structures?
I mean, like the illusion that DEI is for anything.
Yeah.
Other than to, it's kind of, there's some metaphor. Maybe it's Animal Farm. I don't know. But like, just like, in order to like slaughter the sheep, like you have to feed them something nice first. You want them to die happy. Like that type of thing where it's like, that's what I feel like, it's interesting time to talk about it, but like, yeah, not to drag DEI, but like low key.
No, I mean,
what is DEI?
What is it? And I think like, I agree. I think that maybe not stagnant, but I think it needs to remain unchallenged in a meaningful way. And I can't say based off of my experience that DEI is necessarily challenging this system in a way that will dismantle it.
It's girl boss feminism, right?
It's girl boss feminism, and I think, yeah, it's very nefarious because
it's dark.
I think it's really, if you want to be, I don't know, want to change things and want to change the system, whatever, that's a very vague term, right? So like, let's just say that. But I think the first thing that you have to understand is that like everything is lying to you. The advertisements are lying to you, the LinkedIn posts are lying to you, the person who you're interviewing for in a lot of corporate jobs, they're lying to you. And you have to have that like understanding to be like, okay, I'm hearing one thing, I'm being told one thing, but what is actually happening in front of me is a very different thing. I remember before I got like my full-time job in finance, I was an intern, and I worked not so far from here, like near Times Square, and every morning I would walk from Penn Station, I would walk to work where I would be helping banks and investors and all of this stuff as like a little intern and like really finding my way. And every day when I would walk in the morning, I would see people begging on the street. No shoes, no court, like, and I was in a financial area, so there were a lot of bankers and finance people, and they would just walk right past them and go up to their high rise and work. And so it's not like, and I remember at that time being like, okay, I'm being told that there's so much wealth in the world that needs to be managed. I'm being told that like I'm doing something morally helpful or at least morally ambiguous. But then with my eyes and my heart, I'm going in the world and I'm seeing a very different reality. And I think that, you know, the girl boss feminism is so problematic because to exist in the system and to work in corporate America, you are complicit in the things that corporate America is doing. Even if you're like the most diverse, the most woke, the most everything, if your
where do your hands go?
Where your hands go, and where is your mind going? Where's you're dedicating 40 hours a week? And again, another lie. We're told that that's reasonable. It's not reasonable.
Did they just make that up? Like, yeah, we really need to decolonize our minds. They just made that up. The 5-day work week. It's
made up. If you look at, like records of like pre-colonial societies, especially like pre-colonial indigenous societies, I've heard a lot of reports about how they would like work in the morning and do what they needed to do, and then spend a lot of the afternoon like having fun, preparing food, being in community, enjoying the nature around them. I mean, of course, every place is different, but for a lot of human history, like we were not working like this, we were not living like this. And the reason that we have a 40-hour work week to begin with is because our grandfathers and grandmothers, the people who are like, my grandparents worked in like these really hard conditions and y'all don't know, those people were unionizing. Those people were fighting to have like not an 80-hour work week. Those people were like, we're gonna walk off the fucking job if you don't give us rights as workers. So I believe, I'll assume that they viewed that as the beginning of their work. But then we have union suppression and like a stripping away of workers' rights, right? And now we're having this 40-hour work week being like, oh, it's not that bad, where it's like, no, we have to continue that fight of being like, what do we deserve as workers? What do we want? What is the world we want to see? And I think, you know, even dedicating like so much time to a corporate job like is to be complicit in like the like oppression. We talk about big oil, when we talk about environmental crises. Do you think that like media and Hollywood is separate from that? Do you think that all those people don't know each other and are investing in one another and have shares in this company and shares here and, you know, assets, you know, here, you know, it's a very, we are at like, I don't want to say the bottom, but we're kind of at the bottom, and there's a whole web of control and power and surveillance over us, and corporate America is a very big part of that equation. And I don't think it's corporate America, it's a global corporate economy and system.
Absolutely. Like, I like talking about media, and because that's what I know. Like, I can speak to like the experience of being a part. I guess it's the broader question of like, cause and effect, or I guess impact and tension. Like, I'm thinking of like White Lotus and, you know, Great Season made a lot of very timely, palpable social statements about, especially about wealth. I think it's one of those things where I'm like, my friend, me and Saber are actually talking about, I was talking about Saber.
Yeah, Saber.
About why they be letting us make shit like that, right? Like, why is that allowed? One, I brought this up to mention what got taken out, which is that Lori, I forget her name, we can insert her, but Lori's character originally who has a child. Have you seen it?
Yeah, I've seen some of it, yeah.
She has a child, the child's not doing great, and they cut out a narrative that that child was non-binary. And I'm like, interesting. Okay, so we're still doing the little picking and prodding, but at the same time, we're allowing this piece that's a heavy criticism of whiteness, of wealth, like wealth and disparity, classism, to like be so popular, and why. And we're talking about it, and he was saying like, oh, because then we do this, we talk about it, we exercise and we critique, and it's inactionable, but we feel like we've done something. It's like, oh, okay, this reflects it, something is shifting. Like, or we can look at our own experience and feel like reprieve, despite the fact, all right, well, I'm going back to work tomorrow. I'm going to clock in at 9. You know?
And it's hard because we depend on it for survival. And that's not saying like, oh, corporate workers are bad or like
more tools.
We are tools, you know, and like it's not like a moral judgment, but it is just an acknowledgement of like, you are serving the system. We are. I think it's one thing that like is coming up for me like in this conversation too is just like, I think like we as a people need to, it's very comfortable to like sit in our little comfy chairs and, you know, like critique things. It's easy to critique things, you know, even like, you know, like our aunties and grandmothers who were like, oh, her wig looks fucking great. You know what I mean? Like, that's a critique, and it's comfortable, and it's fun, and it's engaging, and like important to critique the world around us and to understand it. I think it absolutely has a place and is necessary. But I think that like true action, you can talk to any like political activist to know that like you have to give a lot up to meaningfully resist the system in an actionable way. Like, that means you might have to, and this is what happened to me. I feel like I was working in finance and I was very comfortable, and it was a very good feeling to be able to make the type of money I was making and to be able to like afford an apartment a room in Bushwick and be like comfortable, you know.
Fuck yeah.
But I couldn't handle the contradictions personally. Like, I'm just the type of person, if like my spirit doesn't align with it and it doesn't make sense to me, I can't, no matter what they're giving me. And so I quit, I left, and my life is very different now. It's always a grind for health insurance, it's a grind for housing, it's a grind to make a living, but I think it's worth it because like I didn't want to contribute, I didn't want my personal time and my personal labor to contribute to that sort of system. And there are other things outside of finance where I've had a similar experience where I didn't align with it and ended up not working there anymore. But I think that you have to accept like it's not going to be easy or comfortable or even necessarily safe to resist. But if you want it bad enough, if you want a better world bad enough where we don't have to live like this, there is another world out there. You just have to like make that change, and like the people will come, the opportunities will come, you will find a way.
It's not easy, but it's rewarding.
I think so. I think a lot of people don't view it as an option, and for many people it like isn't. Like, people have families to support, and I understand like this is not me saying like quit your job right now, you know, but I do think it's like, okay, actually start thinking, because I think that like another thing is like people view labor and their jobs and corporate jobs as a form of protection, and it is not. Your employer needs you. You don't need your employer. What you need is safe housing. What you need is healthcare. What you need is food. So I think it's important. This is what I had to do, like when I quit finance, where I was like, okay, I know I'm not going to be making the type of money that I'm making now. I know that my material circumstances are going to change quite significantly. So let me start thinking about what I actually need and what I actually depend on to live. That is not my employer, right? And so then you're like, okay, health insurance, housing, friends, whatever it is. And then start to make plans about how you can get those things outside of the system. And there are ways. There are absolutely ways. to find that for yourself. And it might look a little bit different than living in like a cushy apartment with like a dog and a Brita. The Brita, like you might.
I'm resisting.
You might have to give up that Brita. It's gonna look different, but that's really, if large swaths of people did that and truly divested,
that's like, where the shift starts, no?
That's absolutely where it begins. That's how general strikes happen.
Yeah.
That's how we can actually make meaningful demands on our employers and on our on our governments. And that's how we can truly start to create a new world, is when we're forcing ourselves outside of this comfortable system. It had to be said. And I think like that's kind of just because it's like, okay, we have critique, then what's after critique? And I think a lot of people it's action.
Yeah.
And also like lack of action.
Yeah.
You know, not going to work, not engaging in the labor system.
Yeah. When I don't go to work, I'm like, sorry, I'm doing action today.
I'm doing action. Yeah.
But I also did think you were an interesting person to speak on about this, because I want to do, I subscribe, I want to do content full time, and obviously you want to write full time, and I feel like I'm meeting a lot of, maybe it's young people, maybe it's queer people, maybe it's people in New York, but people who want to have control over their means of their well-being, of their livelihood, and are looking for different avenues to do that, like freelancing or just like, you know, influencing or whatever it may be. And I guess like maybe I'm getting ahead of myself, but like, what does it look like, I guess, even for those things, to how do they function within it? Like, what does it mean to work even on something like this, where it is like about dialogue, it is about criticism, it is about action, it is on YouTube, which is owned by Google, like where I guess I'm like doing the good place thing, like you know, the good place, where it's like, well, these are all the points because one day you threw some trash on the streets and now you're in hell. Like,
boo.
Moral qualitativeness, but I guess I don't know.
Yeah,
I guess it's all just labor. But you just try and be happy and not hurt people. Maybe that's the lesson.
That's true. I think like that's a good lesson too. I think that one thing that I would say as like people are like navigating that, because I do know a lot of people who are like trying to make a living in like a way that feels ethical to them, in a way that feels good, and I think that's the best way that you can do it. But I think I want to like caution people against this idea of like making activism or being like revolutionary like an identity, because I think that once we like view ourselves as that character, and I've seen some people that I've worked with do this, like portray themselves in a certain way and behind the scenes like act in a different way that doesn't align with like how they're marketing themselves on social media for their own personal gain. I think it's very trendy and very cool now to be like, I'm an activist, I'm resisting, I'm changing the system, which I'm like, cool, like awesome, like that is good, but I think that inherently like activism is like just like kind of resisting this idea of like the celebrity activist or the celebrity revolutionary, because the celebrity is like, it's a Hollywood invention, and Hollywood is a government and military invention to spread propaganda, right? So thinking again about this process of like, what does it mean to be a celebrity? What does it mean to align with that deeply in your soul? Like you can't let it get too deep into you, that you are like this figure.
It's antithetical to especially when it is rooted in activism, it's antithetical to the whole thing.
Yeah, and I've seen a lot of people like, because I am just like care about activism, want to learn more, so like as a Gen Zer, I'm like, okay, let me follow these people on social media and see what they're doing. And I think I've seen some like pretty interesting things where like on one hand their whole identity and their internet persona is being a woke influencer, and I think those two things like don't make sense together. It just doesn't. And I think that like true action and like true change has to be, a lot of it has to be like either face to face or like meaningful interactions online, where you're actually like checking in on people, engaging with people. And like I don't think that the motivation should be your own personal gain. I think we have to resist like hyper individualism even as we divest.
I completely agree. It's almost this idea of like being the goodest. You know, the goodest, and everyone look up to me, and like everyone, let me show you how to like compost and like
yeah,
and be this character. And I also think it doesn't lend itself to this other concept I've been thinking about a lot of, like everyone being human. Like what does it mean to be the person you are, to be a less perfect version of yourself in real life while your caricature is like Superman or is like the hashtag Wokiana, like I don't know.
yeah,
Like just,
yeah.
I think that's unsustainable, and I think it's like in a society that we envision, like for it to be normalized again, like to care about one's neighbor, to be cognizant and patient and kind, and not be so worried about anything. In a society that we envision where everyone's basic needs are fulfilled and met, we don't need we don't need Jesus Christ Superstar. Like, I don't know. What is the end goal of being the mouthpiece of activism? And like you just need to, I think, actually encourage people, kind of like you do. I think you do it in such a genuine way, like encouraging people to implement things and giving people resources to implement things in their lives. Don't look to me, but like look to you. You know, look around you.
Like, not to quote Jesus, but he was like, the kingdom of God lives inside of you. And I think that like this is important, right? Because I think like this element of like the celebrity and being the goodest and being the best is still a form of escapism.
Yes.
You know, the celebrities are celebrities because people can escape the horrors of our world through this person that they can look up to that seems somehow insulated from the abuse and the exploitation of what it means to be a person in late stage capitalism.
Yeah.
Right? So it's like, if you want a platform, are you seeking to be another escape from the problem or a refuge from the problem where people can come to you and, you know, get advice and build power together? I still think that there's this like instinct, and it's not surprising because that's the world that we live in, but there's an instinct still to hoard power, right? Because I think a lot of people talk about like, oh, you know, white men or white people, blah, blah, and I'm like, absolutely, yes, they are hoarding power. But whiteness is only one form of power. It's a dominant form of power. It's a very nefarious and complex and honestly horrifying form of power that's used throughout history. But whiteness as a concept was created to protect economic stability of white people, to protect their power in the world of having land, having property, having capital, having slaves, right? That's what whiteness is. And so when we understand the base of whiteness as power, anyone can hoard power, anyone can love power, anyone can weaponize power against other people, even us.
100%.
You know, and so just understanding that and really sitting with that and being like, okay, what power do I have, and am I willing to give up my power for the creation of a better world?
100%.
I think it's a very different life. It doesn't look like having all the answers and like being this person that people can just look up to and admire. Like, it looks like giving up your power, you know, and
stepping back
and allowing other people to tap into their own power and distributing it equally. Yeah.
It's kind of sad today. You're right. It's potent and it's timely and it's physically getting to me, I guess, like just how everything's going in the country. Trying times.
Absolutely.
And to have conversations like these, it's really refreshing, but it's also emotional because it's like we can really like share space with one another and we can try and touch people and we could try and just like prompt thought and like I'm just a person where I feel like I have so much hope that like these things will come to fruition and like we will see a world that is like just, I guess. And honestly, there's this whole thought experiment me and my friend do about like, all right, like when it all falls apart, are you staying around? Like my friend says, actually, it's a great way to put it. Like, can't wait. Like I'm there for the revolution. Like that's something I actively work towards and put a lot of, like this person like puts a lot of effort into like all of the ideas we're talking about tangibly. However, what the fuck I'm gonna do without DoorDash? Like
real. It's so hard. I think a lot of that is like, honestly, I feel like living in like rural areas really illuminated a lot of this for me. Like, I think living in an urban center, which a lot of people do, or even a suburban center, like we get very accustomed to a sort of like convenience and a sort of like ease of being, but that does not mean it's all extractive. Like even DoorDash, as much as I love DoorDash, I used to be a DoorDash subscriber even. I used to pay that $9.99.
Low-key same.
Yeah, no longer, but I did. It all comes at a price. It all is attractive, and I think that like in rural places, like there's low-key not. Like if you're really like in a rural place, like, there's not DoorDash, there's not Uber Eats, there's not Uber. Like you're on your own, so you really have to like rely on yourself and your neighbors to like grow food. If someone has like chickens, they can give you some eggs. If like you need to do some work on your truck, you fix that shit up yourself. If you need DoorDash, it's a meal. Like
It's a
learning
meal.
how to
Get in
pickle.
the kitchen, queen.
Yeah, get in there, you know. And I think like that's how our ancestors lived, like our great grandmas and stuff. Like they weren't using all of that. So I think just like making peace with the fact that the world is not going to look the same and everything is a trade-off. That's one thing that economics taught me. Like if you want a new world, you're gonna have to give some shit up, sadly.
That's the
you know,
sacrifice, yeah, it's the stepping back.
absolutely.
Sorry.
No, go ahead. Like you're getting too loud. We're getting too loud.
I think that that's there's a lot of beauty in that though, because I think that it's all this trickle down. Like it makes sense to me as like something visual. Like you want the DoorDash because you like worked all day and you're tired and you don't want to go outside. And it's like, what would it mean if you like? And then there also is always that kind of weird dynamic between you and your DoorDasher where you're like, thank you. Like I feel like that sits with me at times where I'm like, this is like very tinged with the socio-political realities of our world, like who is our DoorDashers and who is not.
Absolutely.
And so what does it mean to like not have to like be faced with those socio-political realities, like in a world where it's like, yeah, maybe there's not DoorDash, but like what does it mean? Like isn't it a better thing to have like community-based food and like healthy food and like all of these industries that have so monopolized our world and become so normalized to the point that people can't even remove how much of the conditioning there is.
Exactly.
Like we can't, like I don't even think a lot of people, that's why we have liberals, you know?
Yeah,
like
that's
liberals
why
are like, how do we make this work in the best and like chillest way? And it's like we can't. Like we actually can't. And so like, but I don't think a lot of people have even begun to think about what is possible in a decolonized society. And it might be a lot fucking better. Like, you know?
I think so. I completely agree with you. I think that like
even without DoorDash, that's what I mean.
Yes, I saw this. I need to remember the name of this thing, but my partner and I went to Prague recently. Prague. And I saw this amazing exhibit there that I've been telling a lot of people about. It's called The Poetics of Encryption, and it's based off of a book, also called The Poetics of Encryption. And it's basically this idea about like surveillance capitalism and how like the like technology obscures the nature of its own working from its users, like, and how that influences like so many different aspects of society. And there was this one wall, this exhibit, in the exhibit that was like a mural, and I think it was called like New Extractivism. I don't remember if that's the name, but it was something like that, and I'm gonna try to send it to you so you can link it or something. But it was basically this whole wall of like how technology, surveillance, prison industrial complex, capitalism, psychology, basically every ism you can think of intersects from like, it was like a graph. So it was like time and like concept since like colonization. So like how these things all influence each other and how one thing leads into another. And I think that like, you know, DoorDash, let's use that idea. DoorDash is like hosted by a software, and that software is being hosted in some cloud in some space, and that thing is in our phones or in our laptops, which are built off of a bunch of different minerals that are mined using slave labor in the global south. And the data that we see as like this non-physical and tangible cloud is actually being held in servers with cords that run into the ocean, that are actually like, they are spaces, they are batteries, they are places that actually people are investing into. That is a very big thing. So I think that like when we talk about liberalism, we're like, let's make this system work, right? It's like this, like the system cannot work. Like that is the oppressor. It is like,
it all hinges on itself.
It all hinges on itself. It's a snake that's constantly eating its own tail. It is, you know, every bit of these things. And even like, we're talking about Israel and Palestine, so many of, there's like literally a pipeline between the IDF and Silicon Valley that exists. That is a thing that was written about in one of my favorite literary magazines called The Drift. There's a whole article about surveillance and how the IDF is actually using like Silicon Valley technologies and vice versa to survey and capture Palestinians, to plan airstrikes across Lebanon and Palestine, and literally have 3D models of the city and can bomb where they want, can send airstrikes where they want. All of that, we're using those same systems and those same technologies for our day-to-day and in corporate day-to-day. Another interesting fact that I want to share is like, people are like, boycott Amazon, divest from Amazon. And my partner did a little bit of research and found out that Amazon doesn't actually make a lot of its money from Amazon, the store, or even Whole Foods or anything like that. They actually make most of their money from Amazon Workspaces, which is a hosting site, or not a hosting site, it's some service that basically hosts and gives a domain to websites. And a large percentage, I don't remember the exact one, but way over half of all the internet uses Amazon Workspaces to be a website, right? So that's the system. When we say boycott Amazon, we can boycott Whole Foods and Amazon as much as we want. I think that's good. I also do that. But to truly divest, we have to be like, it's the internet. It's literally those damn phones. And it's interesting because the true like methods of extraction and surveillance are so tied up with like the military, with ownership of these things that we use. And there's a reason why we exist in a society where like so much of our livelihood and our comfort is based on technology. It's because like Amazon is hosting that shit and making money, and like we, like every time we click something and every time we view something, it's being fed into this large computer that is so complex that not one person in the world has access to all of that information. And it's working in ways that are completely unknown to us. And so when we talk about like email jobs and corporate jobs, they're using those same servers, the payroll using those same systems, the way that they log employees, same way, sending emails, same thing, right? So like there is the oppression is the system. They're not two separate things. The system is not allowing the oppression. The system is not creating a space for it. It is it. And so that is the I think the biggest thing that we have to realize, where it's like we need a radical change in how we're thinking about this. And every element, even from DoorDash to Uber, it absolutely, every part of it needs to be taken apart. And I think what's interesting, like another thing I want to say too, is that I think it can be easy to be like, okay, well, we have to do it. We have to change the world. Like, we have to make it happen. But like, the world will change whether we are involved or not. The system will collapse whether we are involved or not. It is inevitable and it is coming.
It's unsustainable as fuck, Loki. I don't know why people don't realize that.
I know. The whole like economic capitalism as an economic theory is based off of this idea of like unlimited growth. So every year in the finance and tech industries, you're expected to grow. Your GDP is supposed to increase. Your gross domestic product, how much a country is producing, should be on like a constant upward spiral. And we're getting to the point where like there's not going to be land left. There's not room left. Every bit of the world that can be extracted and mined and exploited and extracted from is. And why do you think that we're expanding up now into space? Because it's never going to be enough. It's an endless hungry beast. And I think we're getting to the point now where it's starting to catch up to us. And, you know, even in like email jobs, we're reaching increasing levels of abstract behavior, and so much of our world is based in like this techno scene, this technological space-time matrix. And like also, like, ask yourself, like, did you ever fucking consent to that? Did you ever consent to, like, sit down in a chair for 40 hours a week and send emails? Did you ever consent to, like, the only way to get convenient food is through DoorDash? Like, is that something that we wanted, or is it something that has been forced on us that we are accepting?
Absolutely. While we're talking about futures and the sustainability of this system, it is bringing up this book that's going viral on TikTok right now. Well, but I guess it was written like the early 2000s, I found out. But
oh, wow.
It's called A People's History. A People's History. I'm gonna put it up, whatever it is, and it talks about the real and honest origins of America, and like really the idiosyncrasies of colonization, like viscerally, in a way that details the construction of race and like the realities of the genocide of the indigenous people, and like really that all of these things functioned as tools to build this empire that we now live amongst and give holidays to, and happy Juneteenth, and like you know what I'm saying, like all of these things that now we get DEI to help cover up, like that these were the roots of the thing that we all are forced to be complicit in, or to co-sign, or to rely on to survive. And I think that people don't think enough about that this started somewhere, and it'll end somewhere.
It will. And I think that, like, the biggest thing that I can say is, like, is it the People's History of the United States?
Thank you.
Okay, yes. Sorry, I just wanted to, yes.
Thank you so much.
No, it's a paradigm, right? Like, it's hundreds and hundreds of years in the making, and it's becoming only more sophisticated and more, like, colonialism thrives on on its own obscurity, on how much it can hide from you, on how much it could shield from your own perception, right? So when you're going through the world and you see an advertisement or a cab or a billboard, like, think about it, sit with it and be like, is what is true, is that what I'm seeing? And also, like, this is like this element of like false loyalty, like capitalism kind of forces you into this idea of like, I need the system to survive, I need to work to live. And it's like, yeah, I mean, you do need to work to live. That's kind of just what it means to be life on Earth. But like, what kind of labor, how much, and to who? Who are you loyal to? Because wherever you're putting your, no matter how like woke you are, where you're putting your hours, where you're putting your money, that is where your loyalty lies. That is it. So like, kind of reassessing, being like, it's not like the employer is not your friend, and a lot of people know that, but also like the system will not protect you. The system is killing you. When I say the system, I mean like all of it. The internet,
system,
your
internet,
like your you know, like corporate jobs, and I think there are some jobs that obviously don't fall into that, and like a lot of them that don't. But like understanding that like the way to protect yourself and the way to protect the world is not to conform, it is to resist, and it is not going to feel like easy, it is not going to feel like not comfortable, and it's not what everyone else is doing. Like, you have to like start to think in that way and be okay with taking a different path. And like reading the work of political activists I found to be very helpful, speaking with people in person and trying to understand like what resources and information can be exchanged, and truly starting to plan for the collapse of society. Because it is not only inevitable, but it is close. And now is the time where we should start asking ourselves, what is our role going to be in that new world, and what do we want it to look like?
Shout out to the new world.
Yes, it's going to be beautiful. There's a version of reality where like, instead of you coming to work and coming here today, we could have just hung out, gone to an overgrown forest and walked around and foraged for food, and like could have come to the house that we built together as a community. And you know, just thinking about like, what would a day look like if we weren't in this system. And there's a world where we're like dancing into the night, and you don't have to go into work tomorrow, but we have to maybe hunt or gather or, you know, tend to our garden tomorrow to grow food for ourselves, instead of you having to like clock in at 9 a.m. to get food for yourself. You know, it's a version of reality that is, it's real, and it's so beautiful, and it's so worth it to do the work now to get there.
I think a lot of people would be a lot happier.
Yeah, for real.
Everyone would. Well, you told me, dear viewer, that's what I'll leave you with. Hopefully we'll see you foraging for the berries and whatnot.
Absolutely.
Ava, anything you want to promote before we wrap?
Hey y'all, it's Ava. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of Glass Closet, and thank you so much, Nia, for having me on as a guest again. I wanted to let y'all know that this month, Ebony Tomatoes Collective is launching our premium paid newsletter where we're offering discounts off of our printed editions, access to creative and community building workshops, and exclusive writing delivered straight to your inbox every month. You can access this newsletter and subscribe through our Substack, through our Instagram, or through our website, and it is the best way to support the work that we're doing. So much of the work that I've put in for Ebony Tomatoes for the past 3 years has been unpaid, and I have not made any profit from my work from Ebony Tomatoes, and your subscription will go towards building a consistent payment structure for the core team of Ebony Tomatoes, who are putting in so much work on top of our day jobs in order to resist state-sanctioned media, to resist the colonial publishing and media industry, and to compete with them with a new platform that really puts Black, queer, working class, and trans voices at the forefront. So if you're like what we're putting down, please subscribe and please support us, and we will do our best to pay you back with the content that we're putting out. Thank you so much.
Ooh, Ebony Tomatoes is coming out with a new issue. So stay tuned for that. I'm also a writer, so if anyone has any writing opportunities or anything that they would like me to say or speak on, I would be happy to collaborate with you.
Check them out on Substack, y'all.
Yes.
Good shit.
Yes, and I do have an Instagram.
Indeed.
And an email. I have the platforms, but yeah. I'm here to be in community with y'all.
Yeah, for real. And I want to say a thank you to the people that watched this video. I feel like this community is warm and makes me happy, and I'm so glad we get to like be gay and talk about the fall of capitalism online, at least while we can. See you guys next week.
Yay.
And stay gay, I guess.
Yes.